Thank you very much, and thanks guys for coming. I appreciate it. We've got a very small projected PowerPoint to look at, and I'll just wave at you as we need to go. But my name is Alex Doubet. I'm the founder and the CEO of a company called Door. We've been in existence now for about 2.5 years, so we are a baby startup still, certainly. And if you go to the next slide. I started Door because of a very personal experience that my mom had, and this is going back now 5 or 6 years. But she sold her house and she paid what is traditionally paid in the United States, 6% commission, and that amounted for her to a little over $53,000. And really this drove home for me the idea that while 6% sounds like a small commission, that turns into a lot of dollars for people. And keep in mind, she'd lived in this house for 20 years. My brother and I had grown up there. She'd built up a lot of home equity. And when it came time to actually sell her house, $53,000 was out of her pocket. Crazy to me that you could pay such a high cost for what I perceived as so little value. This is my mom and me. This is a couple years ago on Good Morning Texas, my dear sweet mother. Hi, Mom. So I started digging a little bit more into this industry, and there are a few things I think I want to talk about. The first I'll be talking about in a little bit is funding and how we funded the startup. It's been a little bit non-traditional. The second is execution, how if you're looking at starting a business yourself, how to get a business started, at least from my perspective, my experience. The third is technology, the technology that we're building and utilize at Door. And then the fourth is culture, the culture of the company, the people that work at the company, some of whom are here today, but a really important piece of the story. My mom sold her house. I started looking into the space a little bit more. It's a very big space, and this is one of the first things that popped to mind. In Texas alone, there's somewhere around $4.4 billion of commissions paid to real estate agents every single year. And it doesn't stop there. Obviously, Texas is a big state, but it is by no means the entire country. So nationwide, each year, there's around $65 billion of real estate commissions paid. And if you go to the next slide, the part that we've realized really over the past couple of years, though, is that the real estate transaction is not just a commission paid to a real estate agent. It's also this deal originator. It's this transaction that causes a lot of follow-on transactions. And so when you look at I see someone nodding. When you look at the space as a whole, there's about $100 billion in transaction-related expenses paid every single year. That's brokerage expenses, that's mortgage fees when you get a loan, that's title expenses. This is also why when you buy a new house, you get 30,000 mailers from Home Depot and Lowe's and all these other companies, Best Buy. It's because within the first 6 weeks of buying a new home, when you move, all sorts of purchase habits change. So every single year, $100 billion of just transaction-related expenses paid, but that is also a beachhead, that transaction's a beachhead into a lot of other follow-on expenses. Next slide. So I hope you guys can see this. I'll talk through some of this. As I started exploring the space, what has become really clear in recent years is that the space is really segmented into 3 or 4 very specific areas. At the top end of the market, and in Dallas we think of this, in DFW we think of this as $1 million+ homes. You have what we'd call luxury brokerages. That's Sotheby's, Briggs Freeman. Down here near the top you've got a company called Compass. So Compass is actually a startup in the real estate brokerage space. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. They're buying up luxury brokerages around the country. They just came into Dallas. And they're really focused on that high end of the market, the $1 million+ homes. Just below that, we have 2 groups that are really closely related. You've got what we think of as the old-fashioned brokerage space. So those are the old stalwarts that you're probably familiar with. You've got RE/MAX, you've got Keller Williams, Century 21. Here in Dallas, you might be familiar with Ally Beth Allman, with Ebby Halliday. Up north, Nathan Grace. There are a lot of different brokerages. And then you come to the section called what we think of as discount brokers. And these are the brokers that really intensely compete on price. And the granddaddy in that space is a company called Redfin. They're based up in Washington. They're a public company now. They've been around for a long time. But we also have other entrants like Clever. Purple Bricks is actually based out in the United Kingdom. And then at the bottom, finally, you have FSBO, for sale by owner. And that is the part of the market where people are most intensely motivated by the price at which they can sell their home. And an interesting fact here, I think, is that in the year 2000, about 20% of people sold their house for sale by owner. That's actually gone down since the year 2000. So about 8% of people sell their house FSBO these days. There's been just an explosion in data, and I think that people tend to use agents now more as kind of interpreters of that data. But this is what the space looked like: $100 billion, 65 of which is paid to brokerages that are largely segmented this way every single year. If you go to the next slide. So Door, what is Door? And why does Door exist? Because I mentioned just a second ago, the idea of flat fee brokerages is around. That's existed for a long time. The idea of for sale by owner has existed for a long time. Door is a real estate transaction platform, and we started with a technology-enabled real estate brokerage. So Door charges a flat $5,000 per side at close, regardless of the price of the home. That means if you're buying a house with us, all the money above $5,000 that we get in commission, we give back to you. So we split the commission with you, essentially. So if you buy a $500,000 home, we give you back $10,000 in cash. If you're selling that same home, we stage your home, we do a 3D model, we put the sign in the yard, the lockbox, it's in the MLS, it's syndicated around the internet, and you save $10,000 when you're selling that home. And the why, I think, is an important question. And the why that really stuck out to me a few years back when we were starting the company is that today about 95% of people look online when they're going to buy a house. So essentially everybody now looks online to buy a home. And 2016 was actually the first year in which a majority of people bought a home that they had found on their own. So 51% of buyers in 2016 bought a house that they said, hey, Mr. Agent, show me these houses, or show me this house. I want to go buy these houses. So 20 years ago, before the internet really existed, before search engines for real estate really existed, realtors completely controlled that information flow. Realtors had the MLS. The MLS was actually a binder that was printed out that they could use. And that's not the case anymore. The listing information is completely open. People can access it. The asymmetry of information between buyers and sellers and real estate agents is far, far, far lower than it used to be. And that is a really important answer to the question of why. And I think a really important point if you're starting a startup, if you're running a business, one of the biggest pieces of technology that Door uses today is something that we didn't invent, which is search engines. Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, any of those search engines, any of the portals that you look at to buy a house when you're going to buy a home, that's technology that we leverage to make our process more efficient, because we know now that the amount of work that agents do is not nearly what it used to be prior to the advent of search portals on the internet. We are a tech-enabled brokerage, and I'm going to get into some of this in a little bit, but we're a tech-enabled brokerage, and our agents do far more transactions per month and per year than the traditional agent does, and we do that at a far higher rate of satisfaction than the traditional agents do. And we have to, right? Because in the Dallas area, for instance, the average commission paid on a home sale is going to be somewhere around $10,000 per side, $20,000 total. We only charge $5,000. So our agents have to do more volume in order for the company to exist, for the company to make money. One final point before moving on. I mentioned earlier that the home transaction happens, and then people do all sorts of follow-on transactions. You have to pay a title company, you have to pay a mortgage company, you have to do all these things. And what we realized about a year and a half ago, was that we, Door, we're doing a lot of work to generate these transactions. We're spending a lot of money marketing. We're trying to get clients in the door. And what traditionally happens is these real estate agents hand off leads to mortgage companies, to title companies for free. They give those away. And that was not great in our mind, because we're spending a lot of money, doing a lot of work to win clients, and then handing away potential revenue streams. So part of our story is also one of vertical integration. We started with brokerage. We got our title company license last September. We actually just got our mortgage license about 2 weeks ago. So Door Incorporated now has 3 revenue verticals. We've got brokerage, we've got title, and we've got mortgage, so that if you're buying a home with us, you don't have to go talk to someone else to get a mortgage. You can talk to us. Our average client saves around $12,000 when they're buying a home with us. If you're selling a home, you don't have to go talk to another title company. We have a title company in-house. So it's a one-stop, very convenient place to transact homes now. Next slide. So the old-fashioned agent, these are some comparisons. The old-fashioned agent, the traditional agent, does about 5 sides a year. So that means on average, in DFW, actually nationwide as well, a real estate agent does 5 transactions a year. Next one. This is actually data from RE/MAX, the big national franchisor of brokerages. There's a question you've probably seen in your inbox. How likely are you to refer our service or our product to your friends and family? 1 to 10. That's a net promoter score question. So it's measuring how many of your clients will actually promote your business, free word of mouth. RE/MAX has a 6. Next. So here's Door. At Door right now, our agents do 66 sides per year. Side is a buy or sell side. So the average agent does 5. Our agents are doing over 10 times that many every single year. So I mentioned a little while ago volume. That's certainly a big part of the story. Our agents are doing over 10 times as many transactions as the average real estate agent. But importantly, on the next slide, our net promoter score is 74. So the average, the best data we could find, RE/MAX, they have a 6. Ours is a 74. So that means roughly 74% of our clients promote our business after they close, and that's rising. So actually Q1 data for us was more like 90. We have a 90 NPS. So I think from the get-go, one of the really important things that we focused on was making sure that our client experience was fantastic. And I'll draw a key distinction here. The internet, I think, has allowed a lot of businesses to save a lot of people a lot of money, and Door is certainly in that camp. Our average client has saved $12,000, whether buying or selling with us. And I look at Uber as an example of something that made a process less expensive. It made it a lot more transparent. It made it a lot easier. But importantly, it also made their clients a lot more satisfied. So in the early days of Uber, I remember getting the promo codes, and you might text it to your friend. That virality is what helped Uber become what it is today, and Lyft for that matter. But they saved people money, but they also had a great client experience. And from the get-go, that has been what we've been really focused on. So we don't want to sacrifice any of our client experience in the name of efficiency, in the name of growing the business. So 74 net promoter score. From what we can tell, Door has an industry-leading client satisfaction as measured by NPS. This is a really important thing for us to focus on. I mean, besides the obvious reasons, we want happy clients. The business reasons are, we view NPS as a barrier to entry. We view that as a moat around the castle. And this is a screenshot from Zillow. We really want our clients to go give us reviews so that the public-facing portals tell other potential clients how happy our clients are. But we've got a 4.9 on Zillow. That's across 110 reviews. Point being, we think that what we do is seemingly easy, but actually quite difficult when you kind of peel back the layers. We're charging less money, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But we're charging less money while delivering a superior experience for our clients. And again, from the get-go, and I can't stress this enough, if you're starting a business, if you're running a business, I don't think that money is a sufficient reason necessarily to use your business. I think it's a good one. And so for Door, I think it's a good reason to use Door, that we charge less money, save people money. I don't think that's necessarily a sufficient reason. So I think the client experience has to be such that people love using the business. Next slide. And this is what has actually happened. These are our numbers, our revenue. And we started out back in actually February of 2016 was our first transaction. And I'll come back to that in a minute. And that was way over here on the left. And this was back when all we had was the realty side of the business. That first year, we did about 75 transactions. Last year, we did a little over 300. This year, we think we'll do around 1,000. So this is actually our revenue by month. And there is some seasonality, which is what you see here coming into December and January. And you'll see it in a second here coming into December and January, this past December and January. But that is what a lot of this focus on client satisfaction has done. The plurality of our leads, so the biggest single component of our opportunities, is driven by referrals. happy clients send other clients to us who we can then in turn hopefully make happy when the transaction closes. And we had some good traction. But I think one of the really important things that I certainly have learned and that has been really fun on the culture side of things is how your team grows and how the compounding effect of effort hopefully pays off over time. But if you go to the next slide, we had a nice revenue ramp, and this is what that looks like compared to what we're going to be doing this year. And we're tracking towards this right now. So this was the end of 2017. And we think that by the end of this year, that nice revenue ramp, that company growth is going to look relatively small by comparison. We did over $2 million in revenue last year, and that's not transaction volume. We moved somewhere around $180 million of homes. This year, we think we'll be double that. And revenue-wise, we think we'll be 3-4 times that. And one of the big stories there is in orange, you've got title revenue coming up, and gray is our total revenue. And then we think somewhere around May or June, we're going to begin originating our first mortgages. And that's stacking the amount of revenue we can make on every single transaction. So though we had a really nice run last year, I think a striking thing is when you look back, if you're seeing success, those big run-ups actually look quite small by comparison. Next slide. So funding, I'll stop here for a couple minutes to talk through the history of our funding, because it has been a little bit non-traditional. And I think the headline here is that there's actually a lot of money available in DFW for startups, for venture capital. We haven't raised any money from the West Coast. We haven't raised any money from the East Coast. We really haven't raised any money from venture capital. We have only raised money from family offices and from high net worth individuals in DFW. We've raised, we just closed out a Series A round of about 12.4 million. We've raised a total of a little over 13 million. And the story of that goes back, I should say, about 3 years. The first round that we closed was an $800,000 seed round, and that closed out in early 2016. And that was largely from people I knew growing up. I grew up here in Dallas. I went to Highland Park. I happened to know people who invested in some apartments that I bought and sold, and a lot of those same people invested in Door when we did our seed round in early 2016. Subsequent to that, over 3 different tranches, we raised this $12.4 million Series A round. The first of those was about $3 million. We did a little top up for another investor late last year, and then we just closed out $8.8 million that we started that round in late December, closed it out in early March. I think one of the most, in my mind, I think the most important thing to remember if you're raising money is just to meet with a lot of people, because you don't know where money is going to come from. The meetings that you think are going to be really valuable oftentimes don't turn into anything, and the ones that you have no expectations for frequently turn into fantastic investors. And the one that I'll never forget, I think, I met the guy who ended up being a lead investor in our A round. I just met him randomly. He emailed me after some publicity we had, and we got a cup of coffee. And he said, well, keep me in mind if you raise any money in the future. And I thought, okay, interesting. And I almost didn't email him on our next round of funding, and I ended up emailing him because I remembered his name. And he ended up being our largest investor in that round because he believed in the story. He'd talked to people that I knew, he told me later, and then kind of did diligence on my background. But I had no expectations whatsoever from that. It was just a random introduction. Random cold email, I should say. Happened to get coffee with the guy, and he ended up being our largest investor. And the follow-on rounds from there were largely played out the same. Someone knows someone, they introduce you, you go get a cup of coffee, or you go get lunch, or whatever. And maybe that's a good introduction, maybe it's not, but whatever it is, it's this compound interest of your network building over time. And I try to encourage people who work at Door now, go get lunch, go get coffee with people regularly, because you have no idea what's going to turn out from those things, but it's this compound interest, this network that builds over a long time, and that starts to become kind of self-feeding. Suddenly you have enough people that are kind of referring you to other people that you don't even have to work that hard anymore. you're just getting coffees and lunches. And my dad sometimes is like, Alex, you want to get lunch tomorrow? I'm like, sorry, Dad, I'm booked out 3 weeks. And he makes fun of me for that, but it's purposeful because I would really like to, I'd like to have lunch with my dad, don't get me wrong, but I would like to meet people on an ongoing basis because you just don't ever know where funding is going to come from. Next slide. So in the long run, I think there's a lot of, there's obviously a lot of press for the West Coast companies and the technology that you see coming out of the West Coast, because it tends to be very consumer facing, it tends to impact our lives in a big way. I think that particularly with Door, one of my theories as to why you haven't seen a lot of disruption in the real estate space coming out of San Francisco is because a lot of the people that would be disrupting the space don't own homes. They rent homes largely in San Francisco. The people in their 20s and 30s, generally speaking, can't afford to buy homes out in San Francisco unless they exited from Facebook, in which case they're probably not going to be disrupting real estate anyway. But there is a lot of, it's hard to find, it's certainly hard to find, but there is technology talent in Dallas, there is technology talent in Texas. And in the long run, what we want to do is reduce the amount of time that it takes an agent to take on an additional client as close as possible to zero. And there's a key distinction. I'm not saying we're trying to take the agent out of the equation, because we've seen a lot of companies come into this space that are trying to take the agent out of the equation. And what I think is really easy to forget, particularly if you're doing a high volume of transactions, is the house purchase or sale tends to be the biggest transaction in someone's life. The $300,000 home in McKinney or Little Elm or whatever it might be that was a couple's first home, it's very likely that they're very nervous when they go to sell that home. They want a person involved. They want someone who can play a lot of different roles, from transaction manager to couples counselor sometimes. And it's fun to think that we can just make this a software product, but people are a really integral part of the process because it's, generally speaking, people's biggest transaction. They're worried about it. But in the long run, what we're working to do is to reduce, and we say 90%, we would take out 90% of the steps that an agent has to take in order to get a home bought or sold. We want agents to really be able to focus in on the high value differentiating part of the equation. And that's not DocuSign. That's not, we want to hire great people, and we do hire great people so that they can focus in on the pieces of the equation that we don't think technology can fully replicate. And that's holding people's hand, metaphorically, not literally, holding people's hand when they're scared of the transaction, when they're worried about it, negotiating with the agent on the other side. All these things that we don't think are going to be automated, be it AI or something else in the near term, those are the things that we want to eliminate with technology and are eliminating with technology. Next slide. So those are things, this is one of our live listings right now. Those are things, and I'll come back to valuation, like automating onboarding so that we don't have to have humans that are actually coordinating with all the various vendors, the stagers, the photographers, the person that puts the sign in the yard, all those vendors that we have to bring through your house in this 1 or 2 day whirlwind to get the home ready for listing. We want to automate that as much as possible. That's when your home is live, making sure that all the information about the home is yours, it's not ours. And what I mean by that is we think that, I mentioned earlier, Zillow has eliminated the asymmetry of information between buyers and agents. Buyers now have all the information that agents have. There is a key asymmetry that still exists, and that is when you're actually transacting a home. There is a lot of information about what's going on with the marketing of that home that agents oftentimes play close to the vest. We want to expose that all as much as possible to our clients. We want to allow our clients to access how many views their house has gotten online, when offers come in, how much the offers were, what their net proceeds would be from those offers. Everything that our agents can see, we want our clients to be able to see, so that our clients feel more in control, more empowered, and also more comfortable with the transaction. I mentioned offers. As offers come in, when you're heading towards closing, one of the important reasons we started a title company was so that we can integrate the title and the real estate transaction, so that you only have to talk to one company and everything pulls in and lets you know what's going on. Next slide. This is not going to be possible to see, I think, given the projection size, but this is what we use when we go to meet you at your home. This pulls in data about sold comps around your home. This lets you know exactly what you're going to net when you sell your house based on what you still owe on your mortgage, based on what the transaction costs are going to be, et cetera. But this allows you to digitally interact with the CMA, it's called comparative market analysis, the valuation that we pull together for your home, so that information is totally at your fingertips, so that we're not holding anything back from you, so that you can make an informed decision about the list price, given the information that we can make accessible to you. Next slide. So why is this important? This is, for me, I think, the thing that really drives me. My mom sold her house. She'd lived there for 20 years. She had paid the interest. She had done the upkeep. She had paid the taxes. She had paid all those various costs. She had taken the risk to own the home in the first place, and then she paid $53,000 of her home equity to a real estate agent. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. And nationwide, a person with a mortgage who goes to sell their home has an average of about 26% equity in their home. So nationwide, homeowners in the country pay an average of 25% of their home equity to a real estate agent. I think that if real estate commissions were quoted in terms of home equity, I think things would have changed a long time ago. If someone came into your house and said, you give me 25% of your equity and I'll sell your home, that sounds like a really raw deal. 6% sounds a little bit smaller. It's a lot of money, but it sounds a little bit smaller. But what really drives me, what makes me so passionate about what we're doing here is that fact right there, this consumer protection angle. The fact that could we make more money? Absolutely. We could charge, and I've had investors tell me this, we could charge $10,000. And there are a lot of people who would still want to use us because they'd save money on their $1 million home. I don't think that's right. I don't think it costs $10,000 to sell a home. I don't think it costs 3% to sell a home. I don't think it costs 6% to sell a home. I think it costs $5,000 to sell a home, to buy a home, no more than that. And so I'm a big believer in protecting consumers and protecting their home equity, and that's really what keeps me going and drives me to build this company. Next slide. So that's Door. That's what we're doing. That's how we've grown. And I'll take a few minutes with Startup Week in mind to talk about how we've gotten here, some of the culture that we've built, some of the execution that got us here. I think those are both two really intrinsic parts of the startup process that are certainly spoken of a lot, but are rightfully spoken of a lot because they're very important. Next slide. So that was us about 2.5 years ago. That was 3 of us sitting on a couch. I think this was after our first listing presentation because we have a bottle of champagne. I don't quite remember. But this was 3 of us sitting in some spare office space that my uncle had. And we just kind of had a hope and a dream and this idea of something that we could build. Next slide. And we really started, and I think the execution piece of it is the important takeaway here. We really started with this, and this is just a screenshot from Zillow. You've probably seen this. You may have looked earlier today at Zillow. And specifically, this is for sale by owner homes in Dallas-Fort Worth. And back in November, December of 2015, when we were first starting, we started out, I was just calling these people. And I only had to offer the fact that I would work really hard and charge them a lot less money to sell their home. That was all. We didn't have any technology. We had a WordPress website. That was all we had. It's really not fun to call for sale by owner houses. Jeff can attest to this. They tend to yell at you. Every now and then they're friendly to you. And I was just lucky that actually the first call out of Door's phone system was to this guy named Will, who said, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Come meet me Saturday." And he listed with us. That's not the norm when you're calling FSBOs. It's not. But just in a regimented fashion, went through this list of hundreds of for sale by owner houses and just called them again and again until they told us to stop. And we started getting a few listings out of that. That was how we started. And next slide. In June of 2016, that's me. That's on the front page of the Dallas Morning News. And that was a watershed moment in the history of the company. And I bring this up for the fact of tying it back to this idea of execution. It was really not fun calling for sale by owner houses. I'll be the first to admit that. We had a few listings, and then tying it back to the random coffees with people, I met a guy who introduced me to a guy who introduced me to a lady named Cheryl Hall, who is a writer at the Dallas Morning News. And to my knowledge, she had never had a front page article. Someone told me that. And she'd been there for 20 years, 25 years, something like that. We met, we had lunch at the Mint over on Oak Lawn, that I think it's a Thai food restaurant. And she liked the story, she wrote it, and I guess it was a relatively slow news day. I mean, you've got Trump U called fraudulent there at the top, but nothing too crazy happened that day. That was kind of par for the course, right? And there we were on the front page of the Dallas Morning News, and the only reason, I think, is because we went through these for sale by owner houses and called them again and again and again and got a few listings. So we looked like we had this company and we had this interesting idea, charge $5,000 and sell your home. And Cheryl Hall liked it, the editors liked it, it was a slow news day, so the stars aligned, and we were on the front page of the Dallas Morning News, I think it was June 1st of 2016, and we just exploded in a good way. We went from having, 4 listings to 25 listings, essentially overnight, over a span of a couple weeks. And it's that old line, the harder I work, the luckier I get. I've heard Henry Ford said it, I've heard Thomas Jefferson said it, whoever said it, it is very true. Next slide. And this is us today. We started with 3 people. This is about 2/3 of the company. This was for I think a DBJ publication or something. We now have almost 50 employees. So we had 3 back at January 1st, 2016. We've got almost 50 now. And I think I'll touch on culture here. I like all those people. There's no one I don't like. It's a really friendly group of people. It's a hardworking group of people. It's a passionate group of people. And the hiring process, I think, is a process that is very easy to let fall prey to the urgency of right now. The urgency of, oh my God, we just don't have enough people, and we need to get more bodies in the door so we can execute on this work. And we've come really close at times. I mean, right after the Dallas Morning News, there was a period of 3 or 4 months where we just didn't have enough people to be comfortable. We could do it, and there were long days, but we needed more people. But I think one thing that we have been really good about not sacrificing on is making sure that we have great employees, great people, people who are cultural fits, and that we can train to be real estate agents. People ask me a lot, why would a real estate agent come work at Door? And I always say we don't want them to come work at Door. If they happen to be great cultural fits, we'll hire them, but we want great cultural fits to come work at Door, and then we can train them to be real estate agents. We have a 74 NPS. It was almost 90 in Q1, the highest we've ever seen. And I think one of the big reasons is because our people are great. They care. It's not the technology that helps, but it's really the people that care and will do that extra thing to make sure that the transaction comes off well. Next slide. I think this is just one data point that bears highlighting. Glassdoor, we have a 5.0, so that's a data point. It's kind of a trailing indicator of the culture, but we try to make it a great place to live, to work, so that people enjoy coming into work every day. So it's not a terrible place to work, so that we can deliver a great service, great product to our clients. Next slide. I'll leave it with this. This is an actual Google search. This is a Google autocomplete. Why are realtors calling me? Why are realtors so pushy? Why are realtors important? Why are realtors' fees so high? Why are realtors so rude? There was another one I saw the other day. It was like, why are realtors such scumbags? Something like that. This is Google autocomplete. I'm not making this up. And I think that's indicative of the problem. There has not been a service, a product that really is well aligned with consumers' interests. They have to pay 25% of their equity on average to a realtor. They have to pay a lot of money, and they tend to not get a great experience out of it. And so this is what Google, the great arbiter of things, tells us people think of realtors. And next slide. And this is what they think of us. And I kind of like this point, and I'll end here. realtors message into us every now and then, and they're really angry about things. This is, you probably can't read this. Tom on March 31st said, "This makes the 45,766th bottom feeder company introducing their one-of-a-kind concept. When does it ever end? Remember, folks, you get what you pay for." That is a common refrain that we hear. You get what you pay for. Realtors love saying that. Well, you could pay me $15,000, you could pay Door $5,000, but you get what you pay for. And I don't think that's true anymore. You don't get what you pay for. You get a lot more than you pay for at Door. And that has been the lens that we viewed the world through from the beginning. And I think if you're running a startup, if you're starting a company, remember that. Cost is what you pay, value is what you get. So we want people to pay a fair cost. We want people to get a great value. No, one more thing. The other one here, this is Carol. Carol really, she grinded my gears. She said, "I can't wait to see your angle and have it exposed to the public." I can't wait to see your angle and have it exposed to the public. I actually emailed Carol back. I didn't include this email. I sent her a really long email back. And I would tell Carol, like I'm saying here, I mean, we don't really have many secrets. All of the company's information is semi-public. I mean, it's in the MLS. You can go look up exactly how many homes we've sold and bought and guess our revenue. I mean, there really aren't many secrets in this industry. And when Carol said, "I can't wait till your angle is exposed," I just thought that was funny, because our angle is we just want to provide people great service. We want to save people a lot of money. And that's it. That is the angle. And I don't think that's very bad. And I think a really telling thing that I've seen time and time again, starting with the Dallas Morning News article, there were 250 comments that I have archived in Dropbox somewhere of realtors just saying, "What a stupid idea, this makes no sense, blah, 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 blah." And I'm not throwing all realtors into the same bucket. I'm a realtor, I'll point out. We are all realtors at Door. But the realtors who get angry, I think the telling thing there is they're not angry because we're doing something wrong. We're angry because we're trying to save people money and putting their job at risk. That's why I think they're angry. They're angry because they see the train coming down the tracks, and they know that it doesn't make sense for them to charge $15,000 to sell a $500,000 home. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense if you're buying a home that your buyer's agent gets $15,000 of your money when you buy that $500,000 house. So they're not angry at what we're doing. I think they're angry because we're endangering their livelihood in the long run. But and I'm next slide, if you would. But I always say when realtors do get angry about those things, and when people ask me, "Well, do realtors get angry at you?" and the answer is absolutely yes. I don't really care what realtors think about us, so long as our clients are happy. And the through line, I think, at any business is make sure your clients are happy, because they're our biggest lead source, they're our biggest opportunity source. And so that NPS, that Net Promoter Score, is kind of one of our North Stars at Door. We don't want that to dip. We don't want any technology to endanger the client experience. And so I don't care what realtors think, so long as our clients are happy. So that's my spiel. I'll stick to it, and happy to answer any questions anyone might have. And thanks for coming out, too. I appreciate it.